Wonderful. So let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. And I will ask Drew to read us in a lead us in a roll call for attendance. Oh, and now we have one over quorum. Thank you, Rosa.
Good afternoon. I took a shower. Now that the record has shown,
The director Giudice showered.
I'll make sure it's in the minutes for next.
Make sure that's in the meeting minutes to approve at the next meeting. Very important.
All right, we'll start with Director Janice Cater Thompson. Director Chris Corsi had informed me he will be absent today. Director Susan Harvey.
Here.
Director Gerard Giudice.
Here and clean.
Director Nisa Hinton. Director Ariel Kelly.
Here.
Director Sandra Lowe.
Here.
Director Chris Rogers.
Here.
Director David Rabbit had informed me he would be absent today. Director Rosa Reynosa.
Present.
Vice Chair Melanie Bagby.
Present.
And Chair Linda Hopkins.
Present. All right, we go ahead. We do have a quorum. So let's go ahead and move to public comment on items not on the regular agenda. Is there anyone in person who wishes to speak? Welcome.
Thank you, Steve Bertelbaugh with the Transportation Land Use Coalition. I haven't seen much publicity for it, but the California Transportation Commission is going to have a joint meeting in Petaluma this week. And this is going to be an opportunity for them to see how well a community like Petaluma can develop active transportation boards so that people can ride safely on streets. And they're really doing very well with this, and I hope they take a tour. The other thing that'll happen, this is a joint meeting of the CARB, the Air Resources Board, and the Housing Authority. So they're going to be looking at how well Caltrans is keeping up with the goal of reducing driving by 25% over the next 5 years. We're stumbling on that one, and hopefully they'll begin to let it sink in. The other issue is doubling transit. And the cost of doubling transit is pretty high, but hopefully they'll start trying to find the money. The other thing that I'm going to mention for them is that our population is flat and on the decline. And that has big issues for planners who aren't used to planning for declining populations, and for road builders who aren't used to the idea that we're not going to have so many people driving just because there aren't so many people. So those are some of the issues that I think we all need to be thinking about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. Really appreciate that. Are there any other members of the public who wish to comment in person? Seeing none, I would ask the clerk of the board if there are any members of the public who have submitted comments in advance or who wish to comment remotely.
I did not receive any pre-submitted public comments, and I currently do not see any members of the public wishing to speak on items not on the regular agenda. Chair Hopkins.
Thank you so much. So with that, we will bring it back to the board. Thank you again, Steve, for mentioning the CTC and CARB meeting. That's very exciting. One thing that I do want to mention is that I have had some conversations with our executive director around at some point having sort of a speed dating round of what are the best practices that we're seeing in all of the local jurisdictions. And I do hear that Petaluma is highly competitive, so that we can kind of have a, active transportation conversation as a board and kind of share out those best practices and maybe meet with some of our, local BPACs as well. So thank you for that. Moving on to the consent calendar, which is items 4.1 through 4.5. Are there any members of the board who wish to pull any of the items from consent calendar? Seeing none, I would ask if any members of the public wish to comment on the consent calendar to get today. Again, that is items 4.1 through 4.5. And there are no hands raised online and no members of the public coming forward in person. And so I would ask if any of my colleagues wish to make a motion on the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second. Tie goes to Director Harvey. Okay, all right. Thank you for that. And then Drew, actually we can do a voice vote, right?
We can do a voice.
We can do both. The second, I think it was Director Kelly. Yeah,
Thank you.
great. All right.
Was the-
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or any abstentions? Seeing none, that carries unanimously. And that will bring us to our regular calendar item. So item 5.1, we are going to be going on climate. And I don't know if you had any introductions that you want to make before calling up BC Caps, I believe, is going to give this presentation in the hot seat today. Literally, right? Climate, you got to go hot seat, you know?
Thanks much. Let me take just a second, make sure I've got things set here.
You're over there and then. Oh, sorry.
Okay. Very good. Okay. Hey, good afternoon, board. Good afternoon, Chair Hopkins and members of the board. My name is BC Caps, Climate Programs Manager here with RCPA. And I'm here to present to you today on an update on our greenhouse gas inventory and the climate dashboard that we've been working on here on staff. The original plan for today was I was going to be co-presenting with my colleague, Adam Garcia. He is not able to be here today. He was called in for other service, so I will be kind of leading this presentation. I definitely want to give him the lion's share of the credit for much of the work that you're going to see here today. He has been working very diligently on some of these tools, and he and I have been working together. So as we get into this, wanted to give you just a very brief kind of a bit of background information. As many of you know, RCPA every 2 years or so conducts a community-wide greenhouse gas inventory. We've been doing this for a number of years, and we currently have 30 years of data. And we are that has been assembled. All of that data has normally been published as PDF documents and then posted on our web every 2 years with a bit of information surrounding that year's inventory. We've never really had a fashion where one could search through the entire data archive all at once or really start to look at trends and get hands on a little bit more of that information behind the scenes. So we've been conducting this inventory for a number of years. The inventory is broken down into 5 major analysis sectors. We look at building energy, transportation, water and wastewater, agriculture, and solid waste. And we are currently working on the latest iteration of that inventory, which will look at 2022 data. And then we'll be presenting that data to you later on this spring or in the early summer. And what we have been doing in conjunction or in parallel with some of that work is we've also been creating this greenhouse gas dashboard, a climate dashboard. This was, we presented to this board, I believe it was possibly last October, and got some feedback from all of you on kind of some of the features that we are been looking to integrate and incorporate into this software. So as I mentioned, we're working with our inventory data from 30 years, 1990 to 2020. We're looking to build in some tools that basically allow us to filter the data by sector, by year, or by jurisdiction. Looking to being able to view total emissions and per capita emissions, compare our emission trends over time versus our long-term reduction targets, and produce a countywide emissions map. We picture 3 major types of users that we're talking about at this point. One is internally for local government staff, our staff in-house, and or the planners, kind of planning teams that are at each of the jurisdictions and at the county. There's a number of community advocates and kind of climate citizens, I'll call them, around the county that are very interested in getting this access to the data. And then we also kind of assume that this will actually be very useful for just the general public users and trying to encourage some enthusiasm at a ground level, really for reduced emissions over time. So I'll go ahead and show you the current version in just a moment. On this page here, we have a few of the items that we have not yet are ready for implementation and that we're working on behind the scenes. We'll hope to be able to show these other features later on this summer, but we're looking to incorporate the ability to download the data really for further analysis if one wants to actually take it out and analyze directly. We're looking to create a number of jurisdictional profile pages, which will allow each jurisdiction its kind of own home within this software. We are also tracking all of the climate action plans and greenhouse gas reduction strategies at each of the jurisdictions. So we are looking to incorporate that data with actions that are being taken by local government. We're looking to incorporate kind of household and business related recommendations for actions that can be taken. There's a role, our emissions over the long term. We're hoping to be able to balance out any remaining emissions with carbon sequestration efforts to reach carbon neutrality. So we're looking to enhance kind of the carbon sequestration tracking that is we're building into this. And then we are also looking to incorporate some social equity indicators and other resilience metrics over the longer term. And I guess just as an indication of some of those additional metrics we're looking to incorporate, we're looking to add in, these would be additional indicators that are not necessarily tied directly to the emissions or not emissions directly, but tell part of the story. Things like kilowatt hours of electricity used on an annual basis, therms of natural gas, gallons of water, number of PV systems installed by jurisdiction over time, number of programs financed through the Sonoma County Energy Independence Program, dollar amount of Skype projects over time, the average VMT per person by jurisdiction. This gives you a flavor for some of the additional information that we are collecting and going to be adding over time. So I need to do one quick switch here, and I want to be able to show off the work that we have been doing. Okay, as in the board packet and as part of this presentation that you'll all receive, there's a link in there, a temporary link that's in the that leads to this page. This page at this point is not necessarily integrated into our RCPA webpage yet, but is live on the web. We have gotten presented this to our RCPA members and partners last week, and also had at least one focus meeting with our jurisdictions to basically start to get feedback from our partners on how this would be most useful and improvements they would like to see made. And the intent today is not to go over this in incredible detail, but to give you a flavor for what we've been working on here as a team. So in general, our homepage gives a general view of countywide emissions across all sectors, across all jurisdictions for the 30 years that we have data. And you can see in the chart that's right here showing basically showing the trend of greenhouse gas emissions reductions from 1990 through 2020. Here's a summary chart at the top. On the front page, we have then this graphic, this meter that is showing us where our emissions currently are and where we need to dial them back to. There is a table here that presents these informations in tabular format. And one feature I wanted to show off right off the bat is for any of these little widgets that are on the page, there's the ability to use a focus mode and basically to pull that out into a separate window or a separate page if somebody wants to actually I want this graph, I want to print that, open it up in a different window and print that graph. So this is the feature then that we're also hoping right now. The data is actually not directly downloadable. That's one of our next features that we're looking to get built in. And then just a little bit to show here, this has the ability to say zoom in on, let's say zoom in on Cloverdale emissions for in 1990. Solid waste emissions, yeah. And has the ability then that it kind of zooms in and says, okay, given that, and filters through the data and kind of creates a specialized chart. So some of the basic features on the homepage, wanted to go next to basically, we have knowing that multiple different types of users are going to be using this software, and assuming that people are going to be coming with their own set of knowledge that may or may not be able to just jump in and start using this. We've set up a page of instructions here that kind of give a 4-step view how to filter some of the data, and then that is actually then paired with an About Us page, which gives a little bit more information for what each of these sectors involves, and what's included, what's not included, and a little bit of background information about RCPA. If I go back here to total GHGs, you may have noticed at the top here, these are our guidance buttons, basically trying to make it easy for one to zoom around to different sectors. As I mentioned, this front page here has an overall view of all emissions. And now for each of the subsectors, we can press the button at top, and that dials us into just looking at emissions that are from the building emissions sector. And then one can start to dial in even further and saying, well, here is total emissions that are coming from buildings. Here's how it is broken down from electricity. Here's how it is broken down from natural gas. Here's our emissions from natural gas and electricity. And then it allows, as one kind of filters in and says, I'm just interested in looking at 1990 and 2020 values. And there we can select those 2 years, and there kind of excludes the intervening data and just shows us those kind of start date and end date values there. I'll just run through the other pages really quick. We've attempted to, for consistency, we're looking to try to keep as many functions from page to page as similar as possible, so that as one kind of moves through each of the sectors, there's the ability that once one kind of figures out how to do the searches and the queries, that the information is there and readily available and easy to find. Breakout by water, breakout by solid waste, emissions from agriculture. And then the last one I wanted to highlight here with just a little bit more care, all of the other 5 sectors, buildings, transportation, water, solid waste, and agriculture, are all basically come from our greenhouse gas inventory. Those are the numbers that we run calculations on. This land and forest tab is our first attempt to begin to look at sequestration potential around the county. This data is actually coming from a study that was conducted by the county's Climate Action Resiliency Division. They worked with a consultant in 2022 to do a countywide carbon stock report. This is bringing in that data out of this report, and is basically, there was a survey in 2022. There was a large green mapping survey in 2013. That the Agricultural Preservation and Open Space District led. This page here allows one to kind of look at those trends between 2013 and 2022. So this is a little bit more of a snapshot in time of those two. And we're not fully sure how the data in this sequestration or land and forest tab will truly overlap with our emissions data over time, but we wanted to bring it in first thing because it's the flip side of that coin. As we produce emissions, we're looking to increase more and more sequestration in our land, kind of in our landscapes and our forest lands. There are more details and more in depth that I could go into, but I think in general, that gives kind of an overview of where we're at. Next steps are, as I mentioned, we're working on our current inventory now. As soon as we have the 2022 analysis, that data will be brought in and added onto this. We're continuing to meet with jurisdictional staff to kind of get their input from what would be most useful for kind of staff uses with how to pull together some of this data or how to use this data. And then the other, I think, other interesting piece of it is we're also with the climate action plans that are being done by different jurisdictions. Each of those comes with a set of actions that a single city is proposing for themselves and we'll be tracking over time. And we're looking to be able to bring in that list of proposed actions and possibly some of those tracking statistics kind of back into this dashboard. It would be tracked at at each jurisdiction, but then we could bring the data back in. So with that, I want to say, I think that was all that I wanted to share for right now. And I just wanted to say thank you. There's kind of no direct request or action needed today. I wanted to see if there's any initial reactions or any comments. So thank you.
Awesome. Bringing it back to my colleagues. Director Rogers.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. This is one of those tools that we can take back to our constituents and really let them play with as we're talking about different policy decisions that we want to make and how it fits into the overall outcome that we're searching for. And I, in particular, want to call out and thank you for including SMART's use of diesel as a chart. This is, I think, the first time that I've seen SMART pulled out separate from sort of broad transportation data that we've seen for the county. And I think it'll be really instructive for some of us who are on that board to take that back and make sure that we're highlighting that for our Marin County counterparts as well. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you. On the note, I should add really quickly on the issue of SMART, they do their own, I think, more comprehensive operational greenhouse gas emissions. And this is just really looking at the diesel used to run the trains themselves as part of that transportation sector. So.
Other comments from my colleagues? I am super excited about this. This is really, really exciting. And I do have to share that the last time I was chair of the board of supervisors, my husband tried to convince me to get like sort of a climate clock and have that like on the, you know, the dais, which was like basically counting down at what point have you met your carbon budget for the year. And so I'm super excited that I can go home and pull this up and share it with my my husband and my kids tonight, because this really gets at like, you know what I mean? How does it break down? Like this is really fun data to pour through. And I think that it's actually presented in a way that not just data nerds like myself will find it, you know, accessible and interesting. And like, you know, even all just the colors and stuff, it's very visually appealing. So excellent job, not only on the information, but also on the presentation. Director Giudice.
Yeah, and I think it has another purpose too. I think it helps tell our story. And well, it's going to be very useful for the jurisdictions for sure. But as we go through this whole climate action, we talked about this last week, changing that narrative for when the money does come back, really promoting this and showing folks that there is hope. We are walking the walk and we are making progress, albeit, you know, marginally, but we are, and projecting out into the future to see, you know, hey, what can we do? Or it can be done.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's great.
Awesome. Do any of members of the public wish to comment on this item in person? Seeing none, Drew?
Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing here.
All right, so we have Tom Conlon. Tom, I've permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Great. Thank you, Drew. Good afternoon, everyone. Tom Conlon here, self-appointed climate citizen. Thank you, BC, for that title that I identify with. This is great. Excited to see the data. I have a couple of quick questions. Curious to understand, because per capita is included, will there be a graph of population growth and then decline over the last couple of years so that we can see that effect on the per capita numbers? Second question, how do you plan to deal with methodology changes between the years of inventory? I'm thinking specifically, I think it was between 2016 and 2018, we had a factor correction in the solid waste area that was pretty substantial and had a big impact on the numbers. Curious how those kinds of methodological things will be addressed in the tool. But very much, we're all excited to see this, and thanks for your good work, and to you and Adam. Thank you.
Like me to respond?
Thank you, Tom. Let's just make sure there's no one else from the public who wishes to comment online.
Well, I don't see any other members of the public wishing to speak on this item.
Great. Seeing none, BC, it would be great to get a response to Tom's.
Sure. So on the first point on kind of population numbers, socioeconomic numbers, that is a very easy thing for us to pull out into a separate tab and basically have available as kind of a reference tab that would show those population trends of Sonoma County population rising and then falling at one point. That information will also be very central to highlighting on our jurisdictional specific pages, where we can then show that as broken down by not just the countywide totals, but the individual jurisdictions. And on the issues of protocol changes, that's something that I actually should give some more thought to. As far as this viewer is involved, it's just using the raw numbers that have been taken out of our completed reports. Those kind of the details about the methodologies that are kind of in those reports, that's going to be documented in the original reports, but that is a good point that if one's looking at the summary view here, that some of that information may be necessary to help explain if there are large changes or kind of changes or anomalies that make the data jump. So thank you, Tom, for pointing that out, and we'll figure out how to incorporate some of that narrative as well. So.
Wonderful. Bringing it back to the board, is there anyone else who has any comments aside from enthusiastic thumbs up and gratitude and thank you? And we look forward to going around and messing around with the site. Thank you so much for that
You're
excellent work.
And
Really
before I
appreciate
go, I want to give my appreciation to my colleague, Adam Garcia, who's really done the heavy lift on this. This would not be possible without him. So great.
Thank you so much, BC, and thank you so much, Adam, also for the work. So with that, we are going to be moving on to item 5.2, and I am actually going to hand the gavel over to Vice Chair Bagby out of an abundance of caution. My home is within sort of the overall location of one of the projects that's just on the list. And even though I sort of started the project actually before I even lived in the neighborhood, we have yet to hear back from FPPC sort of what the official ruling is, in terms of how close I am. So I will actually be leaving this and just recusing myself entirely and handing over the gavel to Director Bagby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While Chair Hopkins is exiting the room, I believe we have our staff member ready to go. So we'll take a look at 5.2, programming SCTA funding program cycle one.
Melanie.
Am I on?
Mic on.
I'm just not talking loud enough, am I? Here, how's that? How's
You
that?
know, I may have to exit the building too. I live in Sebastopol and I have financial interest in a property that I am not sure might be within the feet. Yes?
Sorry.
He
asked if
it was an action item. I don't know where
It is an action item.
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and exit as well. And thank you very
Do
much.
we have our council here?
And
Do we have a quorum? So those two.
We do have a.
We still have a quorum.
Okay,
Okay, we're good.
thank you. Ariel.
Nobody else.
Thank you for the one of the attorneys in the room. Thank you.
I'll have to double check on that one.
So we'll wait for you. And are you going to come back?
Yes, of course.
All right, wonderful.
I will come back when our chair comes.
All right. We will go, we'll come and get you. So with that, we are going to move on to 5.2. All right, thank
Thank you,
you.
Madam Vice Chair and members of the board. The item for you is the SCTA funding program, cycle 1 augmentation. As we came to last month, we did initial programming at 2.8 million of regional measure 3 funds for the Smart Windsor High School undercrossing project. After that point, we did receive the results of the Santa Rosa US 101 bicycle pedestrian overcrossing grant application for the federal Reconnecting Communities and Neighborhoods grant. Unfortunately, that grant was not awarded, and therefore we are recommending you move forward with the approval of the funding as shown in table 1 of your staff report. That includes 17.2 million in the remaining RM3 funds, 9 million in Measure M funds that were exchanged between the Highway 101 program and the 2024 STIP last fall by the board, and also 5.6 million from the Measure M Local Streets Projects program, and approximately 124,000 other state and federal funds. And these funds are recommended for a variety of projects throughout the county that meet the STA goals. I should note on one project on Airport Boulevard, we've been having ongoing discussions with the county management and at the director level on the scope and limits of that project. And we are comfortable moving forward with recommending that funding The county will be moving forward with coming up with traffic studies and other public engagement to determine the exact scope and limits of that project. However, we're comfortable moving forward with recommending that project for funding. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on any of these projects, but staff recommends that you approve the recommendations as shown in table 1.
Before we go any farther, can we, there we go. Are we on?
It's green, it should be on.
It's green, it's blinking at me.
It's blinking.
I can probably steal it, but it's.
You can have this one.
Oh, that was- that's- There we go. There's a question, possible conflict from a council member.
I might have to recuse myself because of the project that's on here for Katati. Because
So if
it
you-
is
Do you live within?
Cypress Avenue, yes. Yeah.
Do we need to continue this and do an assessment of people's residences
Yeah,
and property
actually.
holdings?
Yeah, so I see two, so apologize, legal is not available.
Okay.
There's, it's so neither, neither of our councils are available for this meeting. I can most likely text and try to get a response, but what I would propose is why don't we defer action on this? And ideally, we'll get a legal opinion on taking it in parts. So we'll be able to, directors can recuse themselves from the approval action of their particular projects. And so we would just need to do a series of motions to approve as needed so that the conflicts can be addressed.
Yeah, we need to establish their
do that.
places where they own real property.
You
I
do
think that's a longer question, and then we would have to take them. Because that's the primary cause of a conflict of this nature is that they own a property within 500 feet. And actually, would the the present attorney like to comment on that?
Yeah, so it's my understanding, and we've done this previously when there was a bulk item like this to just do exactly as being recommended, but I don't see why we can't do that today.
We can take it, we
Just
can
make-
take it as
make
separate item
motions that-
today.
That don't include, for example, Katati, if I were to make that motion, and then.
And then someone
Yeah,
can make a
but-
motion on all of the projects except for except for Katati, and then we can bring our quorum back in the room and take a vote on the other items. Yeah, does that sound good? All right. All right.
Should
Does
we
that- does
do
that work?
like general discussion and questions?
We can
and
do
stuff
general
first?
discussion and
Okay.
questions, and for that reason, we might want to invite, we might want to invite, council member or, Director Hinton back for this. Supervisor, Hopkins and Chair Hopkins is fairly clear that she has a potential conflict. That's pretty clear, but, Director Hinton's conflict may be of a different nature. So she would need to be here for the general discussions and so that she is able to vote on the item for Katati. Okay, does that make sense? And I think we're in good shape. And if we get an emergency text from our board council, we can make an adjustment because otherwise we don't have enough people. Yes.
So my understanding is for budgets, we do require that supermajority of 8.
Mhm.
For motions of this nature, we require 7.
A simple quorum. Yeah,
So we would have that.
we would have that. Right.
6, 7. We would have that with Director from refuse.
Okay. Oh,
So we could do that as well.
Is
There
that the
might
plan?
be 7.
so I think we can all be here for the general discussion.
Okay, all right.
And then when it comes to a separate vote on those projects, we'll have each of you leave the room.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Does that work, Executive Director?
Yes.
Okay. So I'd say let's go ahead. Can we have a replay of the staff report shortly, David, for
So sorry.
Director Hinton's benefit? And then we will proceed with the vote on a case-by-case basis.
All right, thank you
Right.
again, Madam Vice Chair. So just to recap the previous discussion, the item before you is the SCTA Funding Program Cycle 1 Augmentation. As we came to you last month, you approved 2.8 million in funding for the Windsor High School undercrossing project as an early action, as we had not received the results of a grant for the city of Santa Rosa. Now we do know the outcome of that grant, and unfortunately it was not successful. So we're coming back to you with the funding recommendations as shown in Table 1. That includes funding for a variety of projects throughout the county, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any technical questions for staff before I open it up to public comment on this item?
I have a question, what PID stands for in the acronym?
Thank you, Director Kelly. That is the project initiation document phase for any project that touches the state highway system. Caltrans requires that as the first step for a project to proceed. The city previously completed a feasibility study of the interchange, so this will be the next step in proceeding with that long-term project.
Great. All right. There aren't any other questions with the board. We'll go ahead and open up the item for public comment. Would any member of the public here like to make a comment, or and is there anyone on Zoom?
No one on Zoom. I don't see any hands on Zoom, which should see on the side of the text.
All right, no comments. So at this time, let's see, what order do we want to take it in? Do we want to exclude? Should we go alphabetical order? Oh, you guys are both H's. That's okay. So why don't we go ahead and take the project list less Katati? Does that work? All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I move to approve the recommended funding in table 1, excluding the city of Katati.
Bless your heart. And we have a
Wait,
first.
she's not in here, so we can do Katati while she's not here.
We're doing,
Sorry, the
we're doing
opposite.
Katati.
I apologize.
The list excluding Sebastopol.
I move to approve table 1, recommendations for all cities excluding Sebastopol.
Oh, God.
And that is the Sebastopol / county.
No,
West
we're doing
Sebastopol.
this backwards
That's
again,
the
aren't
one?
we? We get it backwards. We're doing it backwards again. So, okay, hold on a second. We need to do all the
approve.
cities. We
Okay,
need to do
got it.
Katati right now.
I move to approve table 1,
Yeah,
including Katati,
minus Sebastopol.
excluding Sebastopol.
All right, is there a second?
That'll work.
All right, we have a motion and a second, and maybe we have a roll call, please.
Director Peter Thompson.
Yes.
Director, Director Giudice,
Yes.
Director Hinton,
Yes.
Director Kelly,
Yes.
Director Lowe,
Yes.
Director Rogers. Yes. Director Reynosa.
Yes.
Vice Chair Bagby.
Aye. Now, would you mind excusing yourself and ask
And go grab
Director
Katati.
Hargis to join us?
I move to approve table
Hold that
1.
thought.
We don't need our vote because we have
We don't.
7.
That's
So We
right.
just need 7.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I move to approve table 1 program recommendation excluding the Sebastopol project, which we, excluding Katati. Including, we already did Katati. So
I think we
Sebastopol.
only need to do Sebastopol.
Yeah.
Katati.
We
No,
already
we only
did
need to do
Katati.
We just
Sebastopol.
need to do Katati.
I move to approve the funding recommendation for Sebastopol / county project.
So we have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, may we have a roll call vote, please?
It's Monday. It's like.
It's
big
Monday.
Monday.
That was,
Pardon me for a second.
we're gonna give the tie to Giudice.
I got it. We're okay.
All right, Director Peter Thompson.
Yes.
Director Harvey.
Yes.
Director Giudice,
Yes.
Director Hinton's recused, Director Kelly,
Yes.
Director Lowe,
Yes.
Director Rogers. Aye. Director Reynosa,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Bagby.
Aye. Thank you, everyone, for all of that great staff work and for bearing with us because, clearly we need more coffee on a Monday. So can we get, I think our 2 directors back in the room, and I'm going to hand back the gavel, thank God.
True story.
I feel like I handed over one of the more difficult votes on the board. Just jump right in, There you go. All right, so we are on item 5.3 now. Wonderful. And so I'm going to hand it back over to you, James.
Thank you. Item 5.3 is strategic visioning and organizational alignment. This is an effort that was part of our work plan that was approved by the board in February. It is looking at the strength between the RCPA and the SCTA and how the processes in place that give SCTA the successes that they've had can help leverage RCPA's future success. To give a couple examples of where this really rings true just in today's agenda, if you look at the greenhouse gas inventory that was presented to you in 2020, 58% of our county greenhouse gas emissions come from transportation. If you look at that funding plan that was just amended into our SCTA funding plan cycle 1, we're looking at over $1 million of programming that's been at the discretion, $100 million of programming at the discretion of this board, primarily focused around SCTA activities. Going forward, there's a lot of opportunities to continue to leverage that relationship and strengthen the work that RCPA has been doing through their climate ad hoc work, as well as with, all of the efforts that they're under with very limited resources to do the climate work that we have in front of us. There is a staff recommendation, or there's a proposal within the packet from Equity First that would allow for this organizational alignment to also strengthen our equity commitment that is part of our equity statement that was developed here at the SCTA RCPA. We've been working with Equity First to develop this scope. The scope would start out with an assessment. That assessment would facilitate focus groups with community stakeholders, staff, and board members to gather input. Equity First would reach out to each board member individually to gain their input and vision for the organization. Staff working sessions would follow. There'd be a series of 4 separate half-day staff working sessions to really bring us all together as both SCTA and RCPA staff. Then there will be the integration and synthesis phase where looking at the values, the principles, the vision, and the mission would be reported back to this board to solicit feedback and then have a draft alignment summary document completed by the end of this calendar year. With that, I would request that the board authorize the executive director to enter into an agreement with Equity First. Carrie, the project manager from Equity First, is also here if we do have any specific questions for her, and we'd welcome any edits to this scope of work and your approval. Thank you.
Great. And bring it back to my colleagues for any questions on this item. Seeing none, do any members of the public wish to comment on this item?
Not seeing any hands raised on Zoom, Chair Hopkins.
Great. Seeing none. And I don't know, Carrie, is there anything that you would like to say, or were you just sort of available for questions? I've had the opportunity to work with you as part of a county planning process, so I'm familiar with Equity First Consulting and your work. Is there anything that you want to share with the board before we take the action?
Just grateful for this opportunity to work with you, worked with RCPA for a long time, and have been a part of SCTA, RCPA work for a long time, and I'm really excited to help leverage resources to make a bigger impact in the community.
And in fact, former appointee served her time on our committee. So with that, I would bring it back to my colleague for any motion on this item.
Yeah, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Did you get Director Cater Thompson and Director Giudice?
I did now.
Okay,
Yep, sorry.
perfect. We're good. We're good.
I just thought-
Oh, a hand. Okay, that's okay. We can totally, if someone wants to comment, totally happy to take comment before we vote. So.
Because Tom Conlon wishes to speak.
Absolutely. Tom, would love to hear from you.
Tom, I've permitted you to speak. You may start when you unmute yourself.
Thank you again. I was just curious if the Equity First team will be also, in addition to speaking to the board members, reaching out to the advisory committees that the organization has. I didn't notice that in the packet, but I was reading it quickly. So that's a question that's on my mind. And in particular, I continue to have difficulty following the activities of the PAC, the Planning Advisory Committee, because it does not appear that their meetings are ever noticed on the RCPA SCTA website of advisory committees. So I'm just curious if the scope of that committee is still of relevance to this work. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. James, do you want to take the second question? And then maybe, I don't know if Carrie wants to answer the first, you want to handle them both?
Yeah, I would welcome them both. The second question, just to address that. So our planning advisory or there's our technical advisory committee and our planning advisory committee. So the PAC is different than the TAC in that it only meets every other month. And when it does meet every other month, those agendas are posted to our website. You will see an agenda posted by the end of this week for next week, and be happy to have Drew or Ross follow up with Tom after the meeting and give him those links both for past meetings and future meetings coming forward. With regard to advisory committees, they are critical to the success of this organization. And we value the time that Tom, as well as other members of our advisory committees, commit to helping both the SCTA and RCPA achieve their goals. In the current scope of work, what we're proposing is focus groups of select members of advisory committees. So as opposed to doing something within a Brown Act setting that the advisory committees currently meet, there will be selected individuals from, say, the CAAC, from the CAAC for the Climate Action Advisory Committee, as well as the Citizens Advisory Committee, and getting feedback from those individuals. The latest discussions to date have been to select the chair and the vice chair, but we'd be open to other input and other members to make sure we get a good representation of the community, as well as a good representation of both the RCPA and the SCTA.
Great. Thank you so much for that information. Appreciate it. And so it also sounds like something that's Tom could follow up with you if he has an interest in participating in that process. And that as long as there is less than a quorum, you could have basically just one shy of a quorum to be part of that focus group. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So with that, we do have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any abstentions or any opposed? Seeing none, that does carry unanimously. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to this process moving forward. So that takes us on to item 5.4, which is our advocacy and legislative update. And this is going to be an action-packed item. We've got some important updates to share. Go ahead and take it away, James.
Thank you. So in your packet here, there is our monthly reports by Politico Group, our state lobbyist, as well as MMO Partners, our federal lobbyists, that cover a breadth and depth of information for the work that staff is working with them and coordinating with them on. With regard to today's report, I would like to just focus on two pieces of legislation. The first one, just to touch base on, is the climate bond, which is SB 867, which we are currently now ramping up on our advocacy for. There'll be more of that as we continue our climate ad hoc work and advocate for RCPA's position on that, which is a support position, and how we can benefit our climate action here in Sonoma County. The second one I will go into more in-depth discussion on, which is SB 1031. SB 1031 is the authorizing legislation for the Metropolitan Transportation Commission to put a transportation measure on the ballot no sooner than 2026. This board has made it clear, based on the language that has been released, that there are priorities that are not addressed within that legislation. Those priorities primarily focus on the need for a return to source, the concern over the conflicts with SMART being on the same 2026 ballot, as well as concerns over parcel tax and the implications on a rural community. With that, with those priorities being of concern, a climate ad hoc was formed. The climate ad hoc included Chair Hopkins, Vice Chair Bagby, Director Rabbit, Director Rogers, and Director Lowe. That ad hoc did meet on March 18th to discuss the language that has been released within the ballot measure. That language is has not been amended, although there has been discussion of amendments forthcoming. Based on the current schedule that's in front of us, I'd like to just run down through how this SB 1031 needs to meet the following deadlines. The first one is a deadline that is April 23rd for the Senate Transportation Committee, where letters are due by April 10th. So letters to be part of the bill analysis in the Senate Transportation Committee need to happen this week. The actions that are happening at Metropolitan Transportation Commission, the author's currently ahead of MTC actions on this legislation, because MTC is the sponsor, but MTC ABAG Legislative Committee won't even meet until Friday of this week. And therefore we're in a position where the ad hoc committee has recommended an oppose unless amended position. That oppose unless amended position aligns with Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority, SamTrans, and Caltrain that all have similar concerns to ours with regard to return to source. Just to give a bigger overview of the legislation and how it'll move through the process, it will then go on April 24th to the Senate Revenue and Taxation Committee. By May 17, it needs to go through Senate Appropriations Committee deadline. By May 24th, it'll have to be heard on the Senate floor. And then July 3rd, the Assembly Policy Committee deadline, it happens. And then August 16th, Assembly Appropriations Committee. And then the end of the session where it has to be off of the Assembly floor is August 31st. So with that, we are open to staff input and feedback on any of the legislative matters within the agenda and the reports provided by Politico Group and MMO. And I would pass it back to the chair to potentially take an ad hoc recommendation of oppose unless amended on SB 1031 following the priorities that were established by this board in March.
Great. Thank you so much. And just a slight correction, I think that you accidentally said the climate funding ad hoc, but it's the regional measure ad hoc. I'm on both of those, but the other one has a slightly different membership. So just wanted to make sure that was on the record. Bring it back to my colleagues for any questions or remarks on this one. One quick question that we discussed briefly at the executive committee, which I don't think that you mentioned, was what is sort of the current percent of potential funding that would come back from this measure?
So currently, there is no guarantee of any return to source within the measure. There is floors that are set for the investment in transit operation. Those floors are $750 million to transit operations that would be primarily revolve around the transit fiscal cliff. The transit fiscal cliff, we do not have any local operators that are subject to that transit fiscal cliff. Therefore, that portion of the would not come back to this county. And to give a little bit of background on where percentages have been in the past, you know, for our OBAG money, our One Bay Area grant, which is a federal surface transportation bill that comes to this county, we typically would see 50% of that in the housing bond, which is going to the ballot in November. That has an 80% return to source. So until amendments are released for this bill, we don't know what is going to be guaranteed back to this county.
And so we wouldn't have any access to that $750 million set aside, which would mean that our sort of max return to source, I thought you said like back of the envelope calculation was like 58% or something. What is that?
It depends on how the amendments are drafted.
Gotcha.
I just based on MTC's performance in the past, it could be between 50 and 80.
Okay.
And then there's the regional pot, right? Which is, it's essentially MTC's discretion as to how much would come back to this county or whether it would be a donor county. And that, and it's the two organizations within San Mateo and Santa Clara, they are very concerned about being donor counties.
And I feel like we're up here very used to being donor counties, and we have a lot of needs in our own community that, you know, I think that we all are very committed to prioritizing.
Here, here.
So, yeah. So with that, unless anyone else wants to opine and jump on the bandwagon of why we don't want to give away all of our precious transit funds, I would see if any members of the public wish to speak in person. Seeing no one step forward in person, online.
No hands are up on Zoom at the moment, Chair Hopkins.
Okay, so with that, I would bring it back for any final comments and potentially a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the ad hoc committee's recommendation of opposed unless amended.
Yes.
Great. And
Second.
second, okay, all right. Director Giudice with a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or any abstentions? Seeing none, that carries unanimously. Thank you all. And with that, we are moving on to our RCPA item, Climate Funding Strategy Ad Hoc Report. And I believe that Tanya is not here, so James, you're going to take that one as well.
On April 2nd, our Climate Funding Strategy Ad Hoc, which is composed of Chair Hopkins, Director Giudice, Director Kelly, Director Cater Thompson, and Director Hinton, met and did a brief recap of the revenue options that have been explored in 2023 and discussed a work plan for this year. The work plan includes 3 key items: funding strategy, partnership, and countywide climate roles. For our funding strategy, the objective has been identified to prioritize strategies to develop in 2024, to advocate for climate resiliency districts within the climate bond, new taxes, and grants. Under partnerships, the objective is to work with ag and open space and regional parks to integrate funding for land and water climate projects into their measure and reauthorization plans, as well as strengthening partnerships with Sonoma Clean Power and Sonoma Water on their climate programs. With regard to the countywide climate roles, the objective is to explore options to optimize the division of responsibilities between RCPA and its members to increase the impact of local climate investments. So working with each individual jurisdiction, both the counties and all of the cities, on what is RCPA's best role to serve our climate needs within the county. So next steps, we would focus on the climate bond as the highest priority in the near term, and we would get clarity from Legislative Council on funding mechanisms that RCPA can pursue, such as climate resiliency districts. And that concludes my report out from the ad hoc. We will be scheduling another meeting later this month.
Any questions from my colleagues? Director Hinton?
Thanks. I do not believe I was able to attend that meeting unless you have my name down, but as an attendee, I just wanted to make a correction to the record.
Yep.
I'm a new member.
I apologize. I reported out the members of the committee and not the attendees. I stand corrected. Apologize.
Great. Any other questions or comments from my colleagues?
I mean, you explained it very well. Thank you, James. I just, during this quote unquote dark time in terms of drying up money and shifting priorities in Sacramento with what is a little left there, I don't think we should, underestimate the power of our friends steering the narrative. Organizations like SCTA, the Blue Green Alliance. I mean, labor can be a very powerful force for us in helping to advocate for, how we get there. So I just would be cognizant of that as we go through this process.
Thank you for that. Other comments or questions from my colleagues? Any members of the public in person wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, Drew, do we have any remote attendees?
No, I do not see any members on Zoom wishing to speak on this item, Chair Hopkins.
All right. And this is sort of listed as an action item. It's sort of to provide direction, kind of is the ad hoc on the right track? I don't know if we really need a formal vote for this one. I think, it's just sort of, does anyone have any problem with the ad hoc proceeding and providing regular updates to the board? I feel like that's good direction to staff. Keep going onward, right? All right. Thank you so much. And with that, we do have one more regular calendar item, which is transit, the coordinated claim for transit funding. And so Dana Ture is going to lead us in that one.
All right, I can actually close this because I can see it up here. All right. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Directors of the Board. Thank you. The item before you is regarding the fiscal year 24-25 coordinated claim for transit funding. So today I'm going to talk through the purpose of the coordinated claim, the policy context, each of the 3 funding sources included in the coordinated claim and how they're distributed, where we are in reviewing and reconsidering the distribution of funds, and recommendations for this year's coordinated claim. So in Sonoma County, we have 3 local bus agencies, a regional bus agency and a regional rail agency. And because there are multiple transit services in Sonoma County, MTC requires that an annual coordinated claim be prepared to document the fund distribution to each transit agency. And that is for the Transportation Development Act funds, state transit assistance, and Measure M funding. So these funds are the primary source of operating revenue for bus transit in Sonoma County. And the amounts in the coordinated claim are based on the latest fund estimate prepared by MTC and the county auditor's office. So while the fund estimates may fluctuate over the course of the year, the coordinated claim serves as a basis to which the transit operators base their annual funding requests to MTC for both the Transportation Development Act and State Transit Assistance funds. The coordinated claim also documents interjurisdictional funding agreements between transit agencies, including city apportionments to Sonoma County Transit, support for the Santa Rosa Transit Mall operations, and support for Sonoma County Transit routes 44 and 48. So the coordinated claim is developed in compliance with policies adopted by both MTC and SCTA. And in 1996, MTC passed a resolution requiring that all transit agencies receiving TDA funds in Sonoma County contribute to Golden Gate Transit, and that the total of those contributions equal 25% of all TDA funds. Go back there. And then in 2021, SCTA recognized the increased need for paratransit service and continuing unmet transit needs in Sonoma County, and determined that the use of TDA funds for non-transit purposes be phased out by 2002. And since then, we've dedicated all TDA Article 4 and Article 8 funds to transit. And then in 2019, in response to MTC moving the state transit assistance population-based funds to a county block grant program, SCTA adopted a resolution for a distribution formula for these funds for a 5-year period. And then finally, Measure M funds are allocated to transit based on Policy 1 of the Measure M Strategic Implementation Plan. So going through one fund source at a time, the Transportation Development Act funds come from a 1/4-cent statewide sales tax and is the largest source of operating revenue for our local bus operators. In the fiscal year 24-25 claim, it includes distribution of over $29 million in TDA funds. These funds are divided based on the portion of the countywide population in each jurisdiction and service area. And then contributions to Golden Gate Transit come from each of the local bus operators, again, totaling 25% of these funds. Contract services between the transit agencies are also documented in this portion of the coordinated claim regarding TDA. So for the state transit assistance funds, there are 2 different portions of it. These state transit assistance comes from revenue for vehicle fuels tax sales, and SCTA has discretion over the county block grant portion of STA funds. There are also STA revenue-based funds, which are documented in the coordinated claim so that transit operators have all of these fund sources in one location. And I'll also just note that the revenue-based funds for SMART are based on their entire system, not just for service in Sonoma County. So the county block program includes a performance-based allocation to SMART based on its share of the countywide combined ridership and revenue hours. And then 80% of the funds are reserved for local bus operators based on their share of the countywide population in each service area. And the remaining amount is distributed among the local bus operators based on their shares of the countywide combined ridership and revenue hours. And then for Measure M, these funds are include 5% for development of the Smart Rail Corridor and 10% for local bus transit to support operations. The local bus transit funds are distributed among the 3 local bus operators, again, based on their share of the countywide population in each agency's service area. Oops. So regarding distribution of the distribution formulas and review and revision process. Last spring, through recognition that Golden Gate Transit service and ridership had been declining in Sonoma County roughly since around 2014, with an even more pronounced impact from the pandemic. Meanwhile, as the TDA contributions from Sonoma County had been increasing, staff got direction from the board to study the TDA formula, and specifically as it relates to the Golden Gate's 25%. That summer, the Golden Gate Bridge Highway Transit District launched a strategic plan focused on financial and operational commitments. And through the development of the strategic plan, the Golden Gate Transit staff convened Marin and Sonoma transit agencies along with SCTA, Transportation Authority of Marin, and MTC staff. And as a part of that discussion, last fall, the agencies determined that a comprehensive service plan covering the 2 county area should be undertaken with the goal of optimizing the service, especially focusing on the Highway 101 corridor, and where services provided by most operators connect and in some cases overlap. The agencies acknowledged that the Highway 101 corridor transit service had not been studied holistically since SMART began service, and recognized the need to evaluate the current service, the cost of the services, the service needs, and how that should drive funding. So as part of that effort, we've coined a term, the Marin Sonoma Coordinated Transit Service Analysis, also for short, it's called MASCOTS. And that effort began to study the transit service along the Highway 101 corridor. So as part of that effort, this spring, a finance subcommittee was formed to review the cost for services, the various fund sources and distributions of those funds. So the primary goals of MASCOTS, as I mentioned, are to optimize transit service on the Highway 101 corridor and to facilitate the best trips for transit riders. The most recent work resulted in agreements to fund the consultant study with each agency's contributions shown on the slide here, and also a final set of principles of coordination agreed upon by the general managers. So there's a draft scope of work for the consultant work for this plan, and we expect that to contract to be underway fairly soon. The work will be led by Marin Transit staff and in coordination with the planning group, which is staff from each agency, including SCTA, the Transportation Authority of Marin, and MTC. So while this planning work is moving forward, the general managers will continue to discuss various issues of mutual interest, including zero emissions bus study, transit priority, and potential for coordinated procurements. The initial findings from the MASCOTS effort are expected to be come out in September with a final report by the end of the year. And so we really intend to use this study as to inform any changes to the coordinated claim. So, yeah, this kind of the initial look at what we're doing in Sonoma County has broadened a bit, but we feel that it is a good deeper look And there's interest from both Sonoma County and Marin County as really the service covers both areas. And so with that, the recommendation for today is to continue using the existing formulas for both the Transportation Development Act and State Transit Assistance County Block Program for this next coordinated claim for fiscal year 24-25, and to develop a proposal for updating the coordinated claim funding distribution formulas through the transit ad hoc and based on the outcome of the mascots effort this fall. So, and then after that, bring a recommendation to the Board of Directors prior to the adoption of next year's coordinated claim for 25-26. And so with that, the recommendation for today is to also approve the resolution for the fiscal year 24-25 coordinated claim.
Thank you so much for that. And I have to give kudos to whoever came up with mascots as an acronym. That is extraordinarily impressive. And I would also give it extra points over just sort of something that I feel like I didn't really think about until today, which was our PAC, our Planning Advisory Committee, which like sharing that with something that could also be predicated with, super or dark money, like that's not a good, but mascots has a nice friendly, you know what I mean, feeling to it. Yep, warm and fuzzy, some guy in a big fuzzy suit running around at a game, like who doesn't love that? So Dodgers fan. No, just kidding. It was Cowboys, actually. It's Cowboys. Yeah. You're the Dodgers fan. There is a Dodgers fan on this board, isn't there? Okay. All right. There's someone else. Who is it?
Whoa.
Oh, throwing it down. All right. I totally sidelined. Yeah, I sidelined this with the mascots conversation. Totally my fault. Apologies as the chair.
Thanks,
but-
Polly. I'll get you next meeting.
All right. With that, any questions? Yeah, Director Kelly, or comments that are relevant and not about sports?
Sure. So I really appreciate the effort that staff is undergoing and partnering with the other transit agencies, and the fact that, MTC is contributing funds to help galvanize this effort. But I feel like this is one of those issues that cannot be underscored. And I say this with all respect to members of the Golden Gate Bridge District, with members of our South County who have residents who are being served by Golden Gate Transit, that this agreement is incredibly inequitable for our existing transit providers in Sonoma County. We know that we have incredible funding challenges for transit, period, as we just heard, in our legislative report. And I know that the Golden Gate Transit, operators, they've had extreme challenges. Everyone had challenges during COVID, but they've had extreme challenges, in the recovery. But for the last decade, the Golden Gate bus service has been declining in their service to Sonoma County for 10 years. So this predated COVID, but I think COVID exacerbated the fact that they are not serving residents of Sonoma County, and they may be serving residents of your jurisdiction. So I don't want to put words in your residents' mouths. I assume they're serving Cotati. I assume they're serving Rennet Park, but they are certainly not serving North County. And I know that the more we talk to Sonoma County Transit, the city of Healdsburg is subsidizing our Sonoma County Transit bus shuttle so that it is free within the city of Healdsburg for anyone to ride it. And we are paying, local general fund dollars to do that. Transit for North County is a huge challenge, and Sonoma County Transit, the route that has the most people riding it regularly is the North County route that goes along the 101 from Cloverdale into Santa Rosa. So we know that there's folks in North County who want to ride transit, that are riding transit, and we want that route to service more people, to have more, shorter wait times, et cetera. And whenever we have that conversation with Sonoma County Transit, which is our only transit provider that serves residents in North County, they say we don't have the funding to do it. And so they don't have the funding to do it because we are spending so much money in Sonoma County sending our funding to the Golden Gate transit operators, which I appreciate. That's how it's always been done. And I know that they're now studying this, but I just want to just state for the record and underscore that this is a funding challenge where we are giving, a huge amount of our transit dollars to the Golden Gate transit operators. And I don't believe, and we will now soon have data to potentially, support or dismiss this concern that I have, that we have a huge problem here. And I think we need to talk about it, openly and honestly, because it's the only way we're going to get transit service that meets the needs of our residents in Sonoma County, is to just have an open conversation about it. I think this is an effort to get that data, which is great, but I'm just concerned that, again, we're going to talk about it in a year and continue with the status quo that we know isn't working for another year. So my question is, are we all aware of that, and are we comfortable about the fact that that's, the action that we're taking today?
I appreciate that, Director Kelly. And I don't know if you have anything to add about sort of conversations that have already taken place, among staff. And I just also want to sort of say ditto everything that she said for North County is also true of West County. I think that I have the only constituents who are actually served by the Mendocino Transit Authority. So just throwing it out there that we actually probably use that far more than we use this one.
Yeah. No, thank you for the comments. I definitely appreciate them. And the efforts to date that started late last year have been a commitment between the general managers of all the operators that were listed between Marin and Sonoma County, as well as myself and the executive director of the Transportation Authority of Marin. So that group, working with MTC, funded this study. That group also had a discussion about the 25% TDA resolution that MTC has passed that states that 25% of our TDA funding within Sonoma County shall go to Golden Gate, and it will never be rescinded unless there is consensus amongst all the signatories to the agreement, right? So it's one of those things where Golden Gate was having substantial financial hardships, and this group is committed to not only resolving what is the best way to distribute those funds, but by September, they will have the data to support that. The principles that are outlined both within the commitment of the general managers and the executive directors that are part of this have agreed to revisit it and essentially come with recommendations next year. So there is a year delay that, ideally we would have been able to make recommendations right now. We were not able to get there given the time we needed. And you can expect, based on a financial, it's actually a financial subcommittee that was formed of that group. So it'll be myself as the chair. It'll be Heather from the CFO of SMART. It'll be David Chan from Transportation Authority of Marin. It'll be the CFO from Marin Transit. It'll be our 3 general managers representing themselves directly, right? So City Bus, Sonoma County Transit, and Petaluma Transit, all meeting in addition to the general manager and executive director meeting to come up with solutions to this. So fully committed, next year's coordinated claim. Whether the numbers are going to change, I don't know, but there will be a rationale that's not one of 25% off the top to Golden Gate. And our transit ad hoc is currently scheduled for May 20th to, start some of this discussion.
Director Giudice?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
thank you.
Director Kelly, did you have any follow-ups on that or? Okay, great.
Yeah, I thought that part of the discussion is a ways off, but since it kind of came forward, I'd like to respond just a little bit. So as you can see, the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District, bus service is mandated, and so is ferry service mandated by the state. However, you can see in the columns there that we're not compensated for it. Having said that, the fee recovery presently for bus service of the Golden Gate Bridge Transit District is about at 22%. Recovery for the ferries is less than 50%. I guess I'll combine this with my update for GGB. We haven't been in the luxury position of being able to run at 100 or 120 or 130% of normal during COVID and even post-COVID, like operators like BART and Muni and some of the other transportation entities have been. We've had to tailor the service to meet the needs of our client, given the fact that there's 150,000 less people going into San Francisco on a daily basis. Having said that, the bus service is starting incrementally to come back. The district faces a $220 million deficit over the next 5 years. And as you know, all of the free money, if you will, has dried up or is in the process of drying up. So to right the ship, the Golden Gate Bridge is going to have to do two things. First, we approved a toll increase on the bridge itself, 50 cents a year over the next 5 years. That will generate 140 million of the 220 million necessary to right the ship. After that, the rest will have to be made through economies and cutbacks and what have you, consolidations. So we're acutely aware, but I would like to point out we've been running very efficient bus service and ferry service as best we can over that period of time. So it's we welcome the discussion. I've spoken to Dennis about this several times, and we welcome the discussion. The agreement that was made a long time ago before any of this happened. So if that goes away, what replaces it, right? So so we welcome the discussion, but just know that the Golden Gate Bridge extends services very responsibly, and we always have, and we run fiscally prudent operations. And so yeah, that's about enough. That's about all I'll say right now. But I appreciate the comments and I understand the frustration.
Thank you so much. Any other comments from my colleagues or questions? Yeah, Director Harvey.
I really have a question. So without this meeting and agreement, it sounds like although we may not want to pay this, we are contractually obligated to pay this until such time that that contract is changed. So we can want all we want, but
That's correct. So the way the coordinated claim works is you really come up with the coordinated claim in January, and then it goes through a set of committees and then comes to us in April here for this board to approve. So the plan is to have proposals by September, so that if it's going to essentially need to go back to the full MTC commission, right? So you'll have the end of this year for full MTC commission action on that agreement, so that we can have a new draft coordinated claim in January that would go through committees. And when we come here in April, we'd have a different approach. That approach is yet to determine what the actual numbers are, but it would have more rationale behind it than just a flat 25%. Right. And this whole effort, right? Number one focus that we've all agreed to, right? How do we provide the best service for those that need transit? Period. Right. You know, not to do with what operator provides it, but just how is that best service provided?
thank you for that. I mean, I understand the challenges that you have with that, but we don't get very good service in Cotati, and it is one of the things that people complain about a lot. And it's always very interesting when developers come in and they say, oh, well, but you're by a transit stop. Well, that would be nice if the bus came and went there, but yes, there's a stop, but that doesn't mean much more than there's a stop there.
Could you provide a little bit of information about sort of the structure that has put us in this place? Like, why don't we just have a direct allocation? Why don't we get to determine what, why is it that MTC has a shall over us? And is that solvable, through some active state legislation? First of all. Second question is also another sort of outside of the box, is like, what I would love to do is say, hey, you guys don't need to provide bus service. And instead we could take that 25% and we could invest it in our own bus service to get to SMART, which we know needs more riders, right? Like how can we essentially provide the same quality of service, but actually invest into our local systems. And so that would sort of remove their obligation. And so therefore decrease, their budget. We could use that money to make our systems better. It just feels like this is screwed up on a lot of levels. I'm just going to put it out there. So what about those two questions? Yeah, sorry about that one. Here's some razor blades. Just walk across them.
Great questions. I don't have the direct answer for you. The experts in the room, like folks Brian Albee for Sonoma County Transit, they will tell you that it has been historically agreed upon, since even before this agreement, that 25% goes to regional transit. And so if 25% goes to regional transit, why is SMART not getting a dime, right? So things like that have to be relooked at and reanalyzed. So, and the more extreme solutions like you're recommending, I mean, we're talking talking about $7 million. So if it was to say, okay, $7 million, don't operate in our county, we have something better to do with $7 million. Well, we currently don't know the cost of that service to know how much we're getting. We know we're not getting as much over that $7 million as we used to get, but are we still getting the $7 million plus, or are we just getting the $7 million or less? So those questions are still being answered, and more to come on this topic, both at this board and at the transit ad hoc. Dana, do you have anything you want to add?
No, just that, the question about MTC having authority over this, I think that this decision was made after a study 25 plus years ago. And I mean, MTC is a partner in this effort to study the situation and willing to have the conversation.
Gotcha. But they still are the ones who can tell us thou shalt invest 25%. Is that correct? Or
I think because that resolution exists, yes.
It's only because that resolution, which is also a signed contract between the recipients, exists. So that's step one, is to go back to their board but we need the justification to be able to rescind it before we rescind it.
gotcha. It just seems interesting when we sort of say like, this is the way that it's always been done, but presumably when this started, the SMART didn't exist. And so that's a pretty big change in terms of that connection to the city, and the ability again, to think about regional transit differently. So, Director Hinton.
Well, I just wanted to add to the conversation because I was unaware of it until I got elected, that also cities like Sonoma and Sebastopol, due to legislation, can't serve on the SMART line because it was always envisioned, right? SMART just goes up 101 and never goes out to us in Sonoma or West County. So these old deals, I would love to revisit them all because I'm super passionate about that. And it just we don't have representation, but we have to pay the taxes towards it. So ticks me off.
I think it was Director Kelly and then Director Rogers.
I just wanted to make a recommendation. I don't know if anyone has spoken to our MTC representative for Sonoma County, Victoria Fleming, about this issue, but it sounds like that it will be going before them at some point. So my suggestion would be that we allow our chair to formally engage with our representative on MTC to let her know that this conversation is happening in a formal way, which of course we can all informally talk to our representative as well. But I don't know if there's others who feel like that would be a good avenue, just because that conversation is definitely, we're going to need her help to advocate for anything, a change of status quo. It's important to know that where this is coming from.
Great. That sounds great. Director Rogers?
Yeah, so 2 quick points. One, Victoria's been very engaged on this issue. And in fact, the previous executive director, when she sent a letter that was done in conjunction with MTC, Victoria, at least in that regard. So she's been very supportive, very happy to, I think, help out in any way that she can. And then just to Nisa's point about SMART, Bill Dodd actually has a bill that he's working on this year that is a SMART reform bill. And one of the things that has been proposed, or at least is in discussion, is fixing exactly the issue that you talked about of allowing others who don't live on the SMART line to be representative of the SMART line. So that whole taxation without representation thing.
So that's where I was going to say.
Now that I'm not on the ledge board anymore, it's hard to keep up with all the bills. So thanks so much for that update.
Any other comments? So I will take sort of that as direction from Director Kelly, and maybe we could coordinate where if you wanted to sort of come up with some talking points of exactly what we discussed here, we could send, does it Director Fleming or what is Commissioner Fleming, a formal letter, and then I'll also just like send her a text message letting her know that that is coming. So, and then we should probably also reach out to Commissioner Rabbit as well, right? As one of our other reps. Wonderful. So this one is also an action item. Oh wait, members of the public, anyone wish to comment on this item? Oh, yes, Steve, come on up.
Yes, Steve Erlbo with the Transportation Land Use Coalition. Just to put another level on this, the Air Resources Board is talking about doubling transit service. So I think the time is now to really get on this. Nobody knows how you can double transit service. There are all kinds of problems with it. It's gonna cost a lot of money. And where it's gonna come from, we don't know. But I think they are experts on what we really need to have. We need to have ways for people to shift from driving their cars to using transit. And I think we just, need to broaden this discussion, which is already pretty complicated. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any member of the public online?
Saw Tom's hand up earlier, but it's now down. So we either can be on standby, keep us back up, but as of right now, there are no hands on Zoom wishing to speak on this item.
All right, last call from Tom. Was that a legacy hand or a new hand? All right, okay. I will go ahead and bring it back to the board for a motion. Great, Director Cater Thompson with a motion.
Second?
Director Kelly with a second. All in favor? Aye. Any abstentions or oppose? Seeing none, we have concluded that item and also our discussion of mascots, and noting for the record that Director Rogers is not a Dodgers fan. He beat a Dodgers fan, but but is a Cowboy fan, regrettably. So Prune Packers opening day is June 5th if you want to go see a Prune Packers mascot. All right, so that will move us to our reports and announcements. And so I will go ahead and take public comment for all of the reports and announcements, and then we'll just kind of roll from one to the next since they are all the same item. I think that that's allowed by, we don't have a council, but I think that's okay. All right. Any members of the public wish to comment on reports and announcements? All right. And online, seeing none, I'll also just open it up at the very end in case anyone hears anything that they want to have a question about. So I am going to hand it back to James, and then we can just kind of like roll one after the other. If that works.
Thank you. So with regard to our executive committee report, that we had a few agenda items that we discussed. We discussed personnel policies and salary schedules, which will be coming to this board next month along with our budgets. Discussed the strategic vision and organizational alignment, which was heard on this, as well as the legislative update, which was heard on this agenda earlier. And then we briefly discussed future board items, including in May, where we will be addressing the TDA 3 and TFCA program of projects, as well as preliminary budgets. And then in June, where the board can expect updates on Plan Bay Area and an updated project list, as well as a transit update, including the SCTA Integrated Transit Plan. And that's where we'll actually see that greenhouse gas inventory, the 2022 data, which we have the cool tool that you just all saw that will actually be able to, look at that data in different ways. Lastly, we briefly discussed the CalCog strategic priorities, which are to replace the transportation funding mechanism. That's a gas tax, as it will be significantly reduced over the course of the next decade based on electrification. Their other focus, which is housing, and then the third is electrification and hydrogenization in rural areas. We then adjourned the meeting, and with that, we would move on to regional agency reports.
All right. Any members of the board have a regional agency report to share? Do you have anything to add, Director Duterte? You included all in the last one about the challenges you're facing.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the only other, the bridge is doing well. But the only other thing is we're almost done with the suicide deterrent net. It'll be done in the fall in September, and typically about a dozen people commit suicide via the bridge on an annual basis, but to date, we've only had 3 this year, so that's great news. So it's saving lives. And then we've hired a vendor to manage the largest project that we've ever done, which is the seismic retrofit. So that will begin in earnest the next year or so to make sure that the bridge stays up if something horrible should happen.
Great. Director Rogers?
Yeah, just to piggyback a little bit off of the mascot conversation. So the baseball season is underway, which means that SMART has now aligned its schedule for many of the weekday and weekend baseball games. Yep, correct. To be able to catch the ferry to go to a baseball game. So really significant for our scheduling, and we already see an uptick. I see people posting on social media as they're taking it down. So great opportunity to take that as well. Plus, we have some construction that's coming up in Petaluma, on another station I hear in Petaluma. It's Petaluma North. So there will be a brief period where the smart line will actually terminate in Petaluma, and then we'll do bus bridges. But there will be some times where you won't be able to take it all the way up to the airport. So just keep an eye out for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Any others? Director Bagby?
Also, besides SMART, sitting on the Great Redwood Trail board, we've announced that the master plan has been published. So please go ahead and go to greatredwoodtrailplan.org, and you can find the dates for our public outreach and also how to make comments about the Great Redwood Trail Plan.
There we go. Brief update from Sonoma Clean Power. Actually, Director Rogers and I both attended a sort of legislative advocacy day on the Hill and did quite a bit of advocacy around our geothermal expansion proposal. And Sonoma Clean Power looks forward to being a good partner with RCPA on advocacy around the climate bond, because that is also of keen interest to Sonoma Clean Power. Bay Area Air Quality Management District, not too much to report there, but we'll definitely share information as we move forward with things like our wood burning rule, which will likely have substantial impacts in Sonoma County. And anything from Northern Sonoma County Air Pollution Control District that you can think of?
We just purchased a building and I just saw a sold sign. So even though it hasn't been publicly announced, I think they have a new permanent home in Healdsburg. They've been having some challenges around office space, so that is moving forward. And otherwise, looking at other geographies, and that expansion conversation is continuing to transpire. And for those who didn't know, we have a separate air district in Sonoma County that encompasses all of Northern Sonoma County and Windsor, Healdsburg, parts of West County, the coast.
Yes.
And
I have
Cloverdale.
the joy of serving on 2 air district boards. So lots of clean air, good things. Okay. With that, I think we are going to our advisory committee agendas. Anything to note on what's coming up with the advisory committees? Just an FYI. All right. Roll on to the SCTA RCPA activities reports. Is that Ross?
Good afternoon, directors. Following is a brief overview of communications and outreach activity over the previous month. So first off, SCTA worked with Caltrans and other partners to hold groundbreakings on 2 long-awaited projects in Sonoma County. So the first was the Hearn Avenue Overcrossing project on March 15th, followed by 116-121 roundabout project on April 4th. So SCTA staff worked with our partners to plan the event and coordinated the speaker lineup, talking points, logistics, and printed materials. Both events were well attended and generated some good media coverage. So special thanks to all MCs and speakers. Also, and this is related to the mascots effort, but SCTA staff has been joining other communications and marketing team members from the other transit agencies to discuss and coordinate our outreach efforts to the public. Many of these agencies have a communications department of only 1 or 2 people like us. And so finding ways to share promotional efforts and help amplify the efforts of neighboring agencies is really key. So upcoming events and promotions are discussed, as well as insight on what works and what doesn't when it comes to increasing transit ridership. So this coordination will continue as transit promotion efforts move forward. And then lastly, staff is preparing to present SCTA RCPA and its partners in some Earth Day events in Santa Rosa and Healdsburg. Not this weekend, but next weekend. So promotion is going to focus on SCTA active transportation plan outreach, some emergency ride home, Sonoma commute, and then on the RCPA side, we will be kind of previewing the GHG dashboard that you saw and some other partner efforts, including just increasing the RCPA outreach and building our list a little bit. So we will have posters and limited printed materials to encourage visitors to stay updated with what we're up to. So yeah, I believe the Santa Rosa Courthouse Square event and then the Climate Fest in Healdsburg we will be attending. Please let me know if you have any questions about communications outreach or any other engagement activities.
Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And with that, we will move into our climate change activities report. And I think BC is going to take that one.
Good afternoon again, members of the board. Let's see, a few updates on activities on climate change activities from the RCPA staff. We've been continuing to move forward on our equitable building electrification plan that we hope to wrap up later on this year. We've been and have been participating in various meetings related to building electrification, gathering information for that plan. One bit of news, it is actually a couple months old now, but many of you, most of you have already probably heard about the news from the city of Berkeley that they have rescinded and repealed their natural gas ban that was basically challenged in court. And so with that repeal of that style of natural gas ban, there's quite a bit of work being done throughout the state, throughout the region and throughout the state on alternate methods to basically look at new methods for building reach code plans. One of the ones we're following is a plan. We attended a meeting on Los Altos Hills emissions-based ordinance and some additional energy reach code options that are being developed there and being worked on at the regional level. Also, you saw earlier today, work on our climate dashboard and our green GHG inventory has been moving forward. Also been working on several different carbon sequestration projects, including wrapping up the compost application project that had received funding from the county through the Climate Resilience Fund. There will be a press release coming out on that work shortly, and we're wrapping up the final project report with the plan to give a report to this board at the May meeting in a month. Additionally, our work continues with the Bay Area Regional Energy Network. Let's see, in the single family program, that program is being revamped right now and redesigned. We are wrapping up public feedback sessions on that program redesign, and the details on that new program will be developed or will be released sometime between now and the end of the year. Also on green labeling, there's a green designation certification training for realtors that is going to be held on April 17th and 18th later on this month. Let's see, our Anna Oliva, our Bayren liaison, also presented this past week to the Santa Rosa Climate Action Subcommittee. And we also met with the new Windsor Sustainability Coordinator to talk about the Bayren programs. And our Water Upgrade Saves program is working with the Bayren multifamily program to identify opportunities for collaboration and how to work closer together between the water savings program and the multifamily program. Let's see, on funding. Let's see, we've been continuing to participate in the EPA Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program and provided a letter of support for the Bay Area Clean Homes Initiative that is being proposed by Bayren, as well as the Windsor Water Reclamation Facilities Biosolids Handling Project. Those are two projects that are applying for US EPA funds and that we provided letters of support for. We also continue to track opportunities for additional funding through the state, local energy and climate coordination team being run by CivicWell as well. And that meeting featured presentations from the Strategic Growth Council and the funding programs they have there. And then to wrap up on engagement and communications, we presented the climate dashboard that you saw here. We presented that to our members and partners. That would have been last week, I believe, and got some feedback there, as well as had a very kind of all-encompassing conversation that was led by Marcus Clark with the county's climate action team on collaborative funding opportunities and strategies that we may be able to work together between the county, the jurisdictions, and RCPA to look for additional funding opportunities. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, in addition to our work on Bayren and building electrification, we continue to have maintain a very close relationship with Sonoma Clean Power. And we had a coordination meeting last week that had representatives from our team here, RCPA, as well as with the county's climate team and with Sonoma Clean Power. And we're going to be meeting on a monthly basis, alternating between building decarbonization efforts and transportation electrification efforts, kind of bouncing back and forth between those two to provide guidance to all three organizations. So with that, that's a wrap on what we've been working on for the last few weeks. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And so I think that up next is Chris with planning.
Good afternoon, directors. I'm happy to provide a brief update on our planning activities for the last month today. So starting off with our travel model. So Fair and Peers, our on-call model consultants, have actually put together a white paper outlining the pluses and minuses of a next generation activity-based modeling system. So we'll be working through reviewing this over the next month and taking a look at that with our technical advisory committee and our planning advisory committee and getting comments on that. Moving on to our vehicle miles traveled, mitigation banking and exchange program project. So the RFP is out and proposals for that project are due this Friday. So we're looking forward to reviewing those proposals and coming back hopefully in May with a negotiated contract for you to review and approve for that project. Moving to the active transportation plan, Katati is actually on an accelerated schedule for developing their plan. There was a public workshop for their draft plan in February. Comments were received through March, and the final plan should be out sometime this week. So looking forward to seeing that on the street. Staff and consultants are reviewing draft project lists, prioritization policies, and programs with each jurisdiction, participating in local plan updates. So that's happening right now. During March, staff and consultants, Fair and Peers, held a focus group for people living with disabilities as well. So getting some important feedback through those activities. And then the next phase of community engagement for the ATP will gather input on draft projects starting later this month. So moving to the community-based transportation plans, we're gathering and analyzing demographic and travel data for South Santa Rosa Avenue corridor and Rohnert Park right now. And we'll be releasing an RFP to get consultant support for that project later this week. So that's moving forward. So moving on to Vision Zero, our Vision Zero Advisory Committee met in March to talk about the Regional Incident Management Program and talk about regional safety trends. So that's a group that's made up of local staff and regional staff to talk about implementing our Vision Zero action plan. So on a similar topic, Adam's been working on developing metrics to help track progress on implementing our plan. So we actually have some money as part of our Safe Streets and Roads for All grant to help move that along. So Adam's been doing some preliminary work on that. So moving to the transit-oriented community policy, MTC's actually been meeting with local staff and having one-on-one meetings to talk about compliance and gaps in meeting that policy. So they've taken feedback from local jurisdiction staff and will be releasing final guidance for the TOC policy in May. They're also developing an online mapping and policy tracking tool that local jurisdiction planners will be able to use to look at gaps in meeting that requirement. And MTC will be providing some technical assistance to help with that, and SCTA staff will also be helping out where we can as well. So talking about Plan Bay Area 2050 plus, this is in full steam ahead mode right now. So we've been working with MTC to update information for small projects and programmatic categories that will be part of the plan. And we've been advocating for local projects and continuing to emphasize the importance of Smart to Cloverdale, that's a major priority for the board and SCTA, RCPA. So looking at the timeline, we expect to see project performance results and a draft list of projects in May, June, with a draft project list going to MDC in July and the final project list going to MDC in September. So we hope to have something May, June for you to look at as far as Plan Bay area projects is concerned. So moving to bike share, staff are developing parking hub site plans and coordinating with local staff on the project rollout and getting those bikes out on the street. And then wrapping up with the Safe Routes to School program. The Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition has been providing pedestrian safety and bicycle basics lessons and have been developing safe routes to school travel plans. So as part of this effort, they've been summarizing what modes students are using to get to school. And they're administering surveys to students and their families to see who's walking, biking, and getting dropped off at school. And they're also tabulating the number and percentage of students that live within a quarter mile, half mile, a mile, and 2 miles away to help to work with them to make it easier to walk and bike to school. So with that, the planning team is quite busy and happy to answer any questions or take any comments.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that work. I feel like everybody is very busy. I really appreciate these detailed reports and all the different things you're all working on. And up next is Shauna with projects and programming.
Thank you. Good afternoon, directors. Just a couple of highlights for you today. For the Marin Sonoma Narrows project, there is a traffic switch coming that is scheduled to come up this week, and they will be moving the southbound traffic to the realigned away from the temporary median lanes that they have been on and onto the new raised lanes that they have built. And then they will be shifting the northbound traffic onto those temporary lanes so that they can construct the other side. That's scheduled to happen this week, probably around the 11th, but we didn't see an announcement from Caltrans yet. So just want to make sure that we set expectations. You heard from Ross earlier about our couple of very successful groundbreaking projects that happened earlier this month and previous months. So we're very excited to see those two projects move into construction. We have a feasibility study public engagement meeting for the Fulton and Highway 12 intersection project feasibility study that will be held at Wright Charter School on April 17th at 6 p.m. And we also had an engagement event recently for a Taco Tuesday where it was scheduled at Mitote, and it garnered several survey responses, and that survey and the website are currently open and up in case anybody wants to check those out. There was a closure for Highway 12 in Santa Rosa over the weekend that was successful, and the tentative date for the final closure is April 19th through the 21st. That will be coordinated with the planned closures that are happening for Highway 37. Also tentatively scheduled for that weekend. We have there was a Safe Streets and Roads for All notice of funding opportunity that was issued on February 21st, and SCTA staff is coordinating with the local jurisdiction partners on the approach for this round. We hope to have an application submitted by May. And then I think that might be it. That's it. Happy to take any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So I would ask my colleagues if there are any questions on not just what Shauna said, but all of the presentations, kind of take it in a batch, anything that people have questions about. Thank you all so much for your excellent work. Really, really appreciate it. And I will, as promised, open it up just one more time in case any members of the public wish to comment on what they just heard. Not seeing anyone in person, not seeing anyone online. Any final board announcements, fun parades, parties, things coming up? Director Reynosa. New mascots proposed for your local jurisdiction?
I'm so excited about Ground Fondo coming back to Windsor this weekend. It's on the 13th. And the race starts, I'll be there at 7:30 to cheer them on to get started. But the fun thing is they have 7 courses. The shortest course is 10.6 miles. The largest one, I cannot imagine this, 138-mile ride. So it's crazy, but they've been out all of this whole last weekend. They were out, you could see them practicing, getting ready. So it's very exciting. But the other best part is it's open to the public. So after the race is over, the town green, big party. So come on out and enjoy hopefully another nice weekend weather. Thank you.
Great. Director Cater Thompson.
Saturday's Petaluma's Butter and Eggs Day from 12 to 3. So hope to see you there.
Yeah, later this month, Apple Blossom Festival. This is the first time I think we are not on the same day as Butter and Egg. Thank you to our new executive director, Mariah, so it's on the 27th and the festival will be both weekends. And you could see online, we have the cutest t-shirts that were made by 2 Anley students. And the back says, "We're all mad here." It's a Mad Potter theme, Sebastopol, California. So the chamber's selling them. I'm definitely buying a bunch of them. So anyway, welcome you to Sebastopol.
And it is a very appropriate slogan for Sebastopol and really all of West County. Director Bagby.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, keeping in the announcements fund, but with a little bit of transit to make it relevant. The Golden Gate Rail Museum has opened their rail bikes in Cloverdale, and this was their first weekend. I was able to stop by, even though I was working on a big yard project, and they said it was basically a soft opening for them, and it was extremely successful. So they ran on Saturday and Sunday, and they will be taking reservations online. And you can go to Golden Gate Rail Museum or online, or Russian River Rail Bikes. That's how they're branding it. So it's ggrm.org. We'll get you to it. And then they also have a Facebook page. So I would urge you to follow them. It's just really nice to have a nonprofit there who is going to, who actually utilizes the voter or the resident, the taxpayer owned tracks that have been sitting unused for so many decades. And it's actually bringing attention to our train station and bringing attention to the facilities that we have in Cloverdale to offer that are actually owned by SMART. And so it's just really nice to see this organization there taking advantage of the interest. And it was just, this was just their soft opening, and it was incredibly successful. So I invite all of you to go online, make a reservation, reserve a car or two. They have about two or three or four sessions per day. And they know that in the summertime, they're going to need to have early morning runs because we do get a little warmer up in Cloverdale. So I invite anybody who's listening or watching, or anybody here to make your reservations and go up and support the Golden Gate Rail Museums. They're doing great work and bringing the attention of those unused resources that we have and giving access to folks who would not normally, these are often areas that people don't have access to, and we're finally seeing them opened up and used. So I invite you to all come up to Cloverdale on a weekend.
I just Googled it and it's so cool. It looks so fun. Any other announcements? Yeah, James.
So I just wanted to welcome our newest member of the staff. So Stephanie Britt has recently been hired as an associate planner. And really happy to have poached her from Santa Cruz.
Awesome. Just as beautiful up here. We also have a nice coastline. Come out to West County. You can surf if you're into that. I don't recommend it. Cold sharks, but you can do it. All right. Anything else? Welcome. We're so excited to have you as part of the staff. And with that, I believe we are adjourned. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.